My name is Lee Running, and I'm a sculptor. The project that I'm working on is called Cure, and the primary materials for the project are the bones of roadkill deer. And I am interested in this material because it's plentiful where I live in Iowa. I teach at Grinnell College, and that college is 8 miles from Interstate 80. And I see roadkill all the time. I became interested in deer bones primarily because of their similarity to my own body. The scale of a deer is almost identical to that of an adult woman. And so I'm curious about that comparison. Somehow I knew I had to do something with this abundance of material and also with this ability to transform something that is initially repulsive into something that's beautiful. That act of transformation felt like a really important component. Deer are a naturally migratory species. Their inherent nature is to walk. And with Interstate 80 in particular, we have provided a corridor across the entire country that is uncrossable. We kill 3,600 deer a day in the US in road accidents. I'm also interested in the relationship between deer and corporate agriculture. Farms are really industrial spaces. Big ag and some of the big seed manufacturers have made farming so that we just have acres and acres and acres of feed corn throughout the state. And deer can walk 100 miles inside of a feed corn field and live and reproduce and thrive inside a field of feed corn. And when they exit the field, they are in effect on Interstate 80, this unpassable section of the country. And they get hit there. What I see in those accidents, what I see in the evidence of those accidents is the postures that these deer are in are reminiscent of Renaissance painting. They feel hugely evocative to me in the way that they have died. When I think about that space of the ditch that is between things, it's a space that's built for safety. It's built so that if a car comes off the road, it won't come back on. So there's an architecture to that space. The physical structure of that space is fascinating to me, that it has this element of safety for the vehicle, but it also has this element of danger for the animals. There's often an abundance of botanical life that exists in these ditches. There's often native plants that live there that don't live in other places because they've been taken out by the different agrochemicals that go into eliminating weeds. There are very few wild places here. When I think about wildness was a space that no one had done anything to. And 99% of the land here has been farmed and altered. There's almost no remaining prairie. When we think about wildness, the ideas around that space, wild space, means diversity. Wild space means a multitude of kinds of plants and animals, and also an uncontainedness. One of the places where we've pushed wildness to between the transport of the highway, which is its own corporate system, right? We're moving goods, we're moving people, and what's happening in the farmland, which is its one thing. There's the space in between that is, in effect, the ditch. And that ditch, that gully, is really where wildness has been pushed. There's all of this life that can happen inside that incredibly tenuous space that is, just feet from semi-trucks that are traveling at 85 miles per hour. I'm curious about that, about the space as a refuge, but also as the space being so proximal to danger. I will get a call sometimes from the county sheriff or from someone who knows about my work and let me know that there has been a road accident with a deer. I make the call and wait for someone to come and grant me a salvage permit. Sometimes I need help lifting the deer because they are as big as me. I'll often work with a friend to get the deer into a truck and then take it to my research site and put it underneath chicken wire so that the elements and the animals can clean the bones for me. Really, in just a couple of weeks, an animal that is a whole, full carcass in just a couple of weeks will go down to just being bones and fur. So I came to this site about a week ago, and this deer was very complete and really teeming with maggots. And I'm back today about a week later, and it's amazing the difference. Like, it's completely dried out. The smell, though still present, is a lot less than it was. Oh wow, actually, all the ribs are here. They've just broken down and fallen apart. In terms of how long it takes to process a complete skeleton from beginning to end, it really does take a couple of seasons. There is always, always fur at the end. And that to me feels important. This idea that these are large mammals, as we are large mammals. I have been working with hair-on deer hides to make clothing that I wear as a component of this project. And putting me inside of it, I feel like draws a more direct relationship between the animals and me. I made an apron, and I'm in the process of making a sort of more complete suit of deer fur. These deer feel like us. I was working more with fresher carcasses and realizing that fur was such a component of what lasted.
So even after all this time, this has been in for a year plus? I guess a year. This was the first one that we buried last year, but there's still hair on it, even after all that time, particularly on the feet. This is down, this is the wrist bone here, so these are all the bones of the hand fused together. So in this place where there's no flesh, it's still, the hair is the thing that hangs on until the very end.
And also thinking about the direct comparison between my own body and the body of the deer. I've been wearing that in a number of instances, working with the bones, building that sort of metaphoric space. The second thing is really the relationship with fire. Another thing about the Iowa landscape is understanding the landscape's relationship to fire. As long as man has been in Iowa, there has been a relationship between fire and this land. Fire is also used as a prescription that keeps weeds down, regenerates native species. There's all kinds of reasons why fire is a tool in restoring the prairie. So I'm interested in fire's ability to reveal. This idea of wearing this apron, standing as a deer inside of this fire, inside of this prescription, has this sort of stacked meaning for me. Fire is terrifying to the deer, and the fires here are medicine. The regrowth that happens is almost immediate. If this work is to be about the relationship between the human and the wildness, that somehow I need to make the visual comparison between myself and the deer. So I take the bones back to the studio. If there's any flesh left on them at all, I soak them in covered buckets of water until the water sort of macerates and takes away any of the flesh that is left on the bones. This action of soaking and defleshing in this way, super smelly, but also very efficient in terms of cleaning that last little bit of ligament and tendon, often in the densest parts of the body. Once that process is done, I will take the bones and put them into a bath of hydrogen peroxide and soak them in hydrogen peroxide for 48-hour cycles. And that process bleaches them a little bit, but it also just sterilizes them completely. So by the end, when I'm working with them, they really are just calcium, and that's the material that I polish. To polish something is to sort of reveal something's most beautiful nature. I take them through all of these levels of sandpaper to take the surface from something like this that still has some roughness to it, to something that is as shiny and perfect as porcelain. So this surface is completely shiny and clean, but the only thing that's been applied to it is sandpaper. Once I have these refined and beautiful objects, I take them to a laser engraver and I'll engrave a pattern onto the surface of the bone. And the pattern that I've been working with is actually what the marrow of the bone looks like under a microscope. And using those marks, I go in with jeweler's tools and remove the bone to build the lace around the exterior. So what I end up with is this sort of calcium tube that has this network of a pattern on top of it. I then take that clean space, the inside of that tube, and gild it with 24 karat gold. And what I'm doing in that action is two things. One, it makes precious this interior space. And two, it puts light physically inside of the bone. The job of gold is to quite literally shed light. It is to put light on something, and to make holy. And I'm really interested in that action, being able to take the deep interior of these bones, this place where red blood cells, where life comes from, and make that space holy inside of this random act of violence. These are ribs from another deer that I'm using to fill in the spaces that have been eaten away by raccoons. With the carcasses that I have that are partial, what I'm working with is filling in all the gaps in the skeleton with bones made of glass. So what I'm doing here is making molds of bones like this. So this is a cast of a rib that fits into this space, and then I can make that same object in wax. This piece will then be invested in layers of plaster and melted out of the center of that, and then glass will be melted into that cavity. So I'll end up with a glass replica at the end. And the next iteration will be displaying these suspended sculptures that are half glass and half polished bone.
So, I mean, why do you do this?
I'm really compelled by it. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I saw this thing and now I can't unsee it. I see these deer and I can't not see them. I think they're beautiful. I mean, I think the bones on their own are beautiful, but I also think that there is this incredible architecture inside of all of us. And that random act of violence that takes out an animal, I somehow want to notice that. I don't want that to be wasted and unseen. And I think that really is the job of art in the world, is to reveal, to make seen what we can't see. And somehow this action of taking something that is gruesome and sort of horrifying, somehow being close to that and close enough to that to make that transform into something that you can hardly help but touch. And to do that by human hands feels important to me somehow. When I started this thing with the gilding and the making wholly of this random act of violence, now it's moved into this direction of me dressing as them, me wearing their hides and lying in the ditch and seeing what that feels like to be so close to the heat of these trucks, so close to the sound of these trucks, and the violence of the highway, and somehow filling these spaces with something that's so fragile as glass feels like an extension of this idea. And I just want to see it. Like, I want to see it made, and I can't. Yeah, if I don't make it, then I can't see it.